It has happened. I am being brought up by my own personal, sort of conscience to respond to a video, alright? I've been pushed by my own conscience to respond to this, alright? Now, for those of you guys that don't know, there's a pretty large YouTuber in the right-wing sphere who has a lot of prominence. His name is YoungRippa59. You might know him by having some of the dumbest takes you can possibly imagine on Twitter very often. I find myself dunking on his Twitter takes pretty often because they're pretty stupid. But he also has a YouTube channel where he also says stupid shit. And, yeah, here it is. He's made a recent video called A Culture of Fear. So now you care about accuracy. And it's the picture of Halle Berry playing. So his whole thing is that he is a black conservative guy who does a lot of videos shitting on black representation in media. He does like the anti-SJW, like go woke, go broke type content. And a lot of the times he'll do videos on, like, say, Ariel in the Little Mermaid remake being black, and he'll make the white supremacist arguments, or like the white identitarian arguments of like, oh, they're injecting race into this media to, help normalize the replacement of white people. He'll make like those same essential arguments, but people won't call him racist because of his skin color, which is racist. It is racist not to call YoungRippa59 racist. With that said, he made a recent video that I've heard is dog shit about my friend Surus. For those that don't know, Surus is a like lefty slash like atheist content creator who is a VTuber who has like the big titty VTuber avatar, and he just does content like dunking on crazy far-right Christians, Nazis, conservatives, like good content. It's basically the same stuff that I do. Surus is a good content creator. I highly recommend you check out Surus's channel. In fact, it will be linked in the pinned comment down below, of course. So yeah, go subscribe to Surus. Go send some love. That said, YoungRippa made a video on Surus saying who are these degenerates is the name of the video. So I am really, really excited to see what YoungRippa has to say about my friend, because I'm willing to rip into him a little bit.
Apparently my mild take of saying child mutilation is bad has kicked this sort of nest of a bunch of
all right, so we're already starting off good. That's nice. So something the right has done quite frequently lately is essentially presuppose their correctness in an entire argument that the left, that is basically central to this entire discussion before the video even starts, right? Like, he starts off the video saying, I am getting in trouble for saying child mutilation is bad. Do you want to bet that's probably not what he said that got him in trouble? Do you think that he just straight up said, out of nowhere, child mutilation is bad, and everyone was like, oh, you don't like mutilating children's genitals? That's f***ed up, man. Do you think that's what happened? I'm going to take a wild guess. I'm going to take a wild, dangerous guess, all right? And I'm going to say what probably happened is YoungRippa59 said that kids being trans and having access to any form of gender-affirming care is genital mutilating children, which is not true, and people argued against that premise. And you're trying to pretend like people disagree with the idea of you being against genital mutilation for children, rather than people disagreeing that what you're describing as genital mutilation presuppositionally in your video is, genital mutilation at all. And it's not. The reason why they call it that is to make basic medical, procedures sound scary. If you describe the removal of an appendix in the same way, it'll sound just as scary. If you describe the removal of, hell, there are literally people who get gender-affirming care and other forms of care like this that aren't trans. There are tons of cis women who get breast reduction surgery or, breast enlargement surgery so that their gender can be affirmed, or however they want to look can be affirmed. And yet you don't see anybody freaking out over this because it's only about the trans people. They just want to take rights from trans people. That's all that motivates these types. And money. Money also motivates them.
Degenerates, gay furries and whatnot, and they have doing a bunch of videos, and they have some interesting things to say. So there's the one guy, Rip vs. Goldpost did post about guy. I don't know what this person identifies as. It's not actually important to me, but they had some interesting things to say about myself. So what we're going to do is go through some of these videos and see what it is that they're going to say.
I invited Young Rippa to debate me once because I made a video on him, and I was like, I would love to debate Young Rippa on the discussion of, I believe it was actually over-policing and racial discrimination by police and the criminal justice system. I offered to do a debate with him on stream, and he never, like it was a very public, like, you know, you made a video response to me calling you out, all right, let's debate, come on stream. Never responded. Never responded. This was years ago. Never responded. He made a video response to my video, and then in my response, I say, let's debate. Come on my stream and we can debate. No response. And his fans kept on insisting, why don't you debate him then? Why don't you debate him then? And I kept saying, get him to debate me. I've offered. Get him to do it. Convince him. He's scared. He won't do it. Get him to do it. Stop demanding that I debate him. He won't do it. I want him to debate me. He just won't. Like, I've already put out a public call out. What do you want me to do? Like, magically teleport him into my house and turn on the camera? I wish I did get to debate him, though. That would have been fun.
Say, as I've said many times before, look, man, if you're a creative in my space, you're going to have folks that are going to say things about you negatively. I say, why let them do it for free? We might as well make some money off of these degenerates. So let's see what this person has to say. Let's watch the first video real quick. We'll go through some others. Let's get to it.
Alrighty, so apparently we got to talk about the Spider-Verse trailer.
Oh, for the record, by the way, the degenerates thing is no doubt, like, from my understanding, Young Rippa 59 is, like, either insanely stupid, like, so dumb that I don't know if, like, anything that I say argumentatively or, like, in a debate could possibly change his mind. I think he's, like, very set in his ways and his beliefs, or he's a massive grifter. And I do lean more on the massive grifter side of things because I've seen his takes get more and more radical. Back in the day, his takes on, like, trans people were, I don't really care what you do as long as it's not in my face, right? Like a very standard, basic take, right? And then, nowadays, you see him arguing overtly mask off the more radical, far-right, like, anti-trans position that's become more acceptable and more marketable at this age. So yeah, I think the degenerate thing is just meant to appeal to Nazis. I think a lot of this is, like, Nazis watch this guy and they're like, he's all right.
Because reasons, I guess. I wasn't aware that was a thing we're going to be talking about at any point, but, you know, apparently it's important. Apparently it's important.
So basically, I'm guessing the thing that Cirrus is, I guess the thing that Cirrus is calling out here, I would guess, is the recent Spider-Verse trailer came out. And in that trailer, in the very background of one of the scenes in the trailer, in, I think it's Gwen Stacy's room, you can see she has a trans flag sign up that says protect trans kids. It's not like claiming that, like, this isn't like a sign that, like, the character's trans or anything. It's just clearly, like, an indication of, like, one, the creators of the movie are pro-trans. Two, it's in line with, like, your average Gen Zer in New York City. They're likely to be pro-trans and have a sign like that in their room. And B, it's like, basically these people lost their mind over this tiny little background, you know, decoration in the trailer. And I imagine Young Rippa made a video on it, and Cirrus called that out, and now Young Rippa's mad that Cirrus called that out. They were literally getting mad about a sign that says protect trans kids vaguely in the background of a shot in the trailer. That is literally what these people are mad about. I'm not even kidding. In the new Spider-Verse movie trailer. That's actually what they're freaking out about. And that's what he's... And someone making fun of him for freaking out about it is what he's responding to right now. His only go-to is like, oh, I'm just going to call them a degenerate.
At least according to Young Rippa 59, who has a channel with 512,000 subscribers.
True.
Much to do with that character that I understand is many of y'all's favorite tokenized character.
Tokenized character. Miles Morales. Tokenized character. You know, the guy who literally took on the mantle of Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe for the longest...
For the record, by the way, like, Miles Morales, as, like, the concept of, like, the kind of character that Miles Morales is, right? Like, another person who comes along to take up the mantle of the title of another hero. Like, they very easily could have just done one of the most, like, especially in the comics. They could have done, like, one of the most, like, progressive-ish, like, attempts to, like, get money for, like, a sort of woke-seeming, like, narrative. Like, they could have done that, but they didn't. Like, Miles Morales is a well-rounded, well-written character that, like, exists on his own. Like, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, is distinctly different than Peter Parker Spider-Man. They are different people, different characters, and their stories and, like, the entire, like, message of what they go through and what they're sort of striving for and what they go up against and what, like, it's different. Like, Peter Parker's whole thing is no matter what, he doesn't give up. Like, he's just, like, able to take it all fucking day, and he'll keep fighting for what is genuinely the most morally good thing. And the perspective for, like, or, like, the general moral sort of message of Miles Morales is him trying to fit in. It's him trying to feel like he belongs and trying to fight imposter syndrome. So, like, yeah, Miles Morales is a very popular character, very well written. He is, like, in no way just, like, Marvel making a, like, simply a money-hungry grab to, like, make a black Spider-Man to appeal to an audience. I know that's what Young Rippa thinks, but as somebody who knows a bit about comics, Marvel, and, like, that nerdy sphere, and isn't just, like, pretending to make a quick buck off of right-wing, like, neckbeards, I know this is true. I've read the original comics where they introduced Miles Morales, because I remember everybody losing their fucking minds back during, I think it was like 2013 or something like that. Everybody lost their fucking minds. There was people even back then kind of losing their shit over Black Spider-Man, quote unquote. And then I checked out the comic on the same website I read the Walking Dead comics on, and I read it and I was like, oh, this isn't just like he's like a whole character, and I'm actually invested. This is kind of revealing how desperate Young Rippa 59 is to call anything woke for his audience and for clicks, if he's willing to say that Miles Morales is just a, like, what's it called? What did he call Miles Morales? A tokenized character?
It's time. Definitely a token. You know, definitely. Maybe you don't know the definition of token, but...
Well, I've defined it very thoroughly, you dumb son of a bitch. You can go watch my video. It's actually titled, I believe, Tokenism and Tokenization Explained. Now, I don't care how a degenerate uses the term. That's actually not important to it at all. If you want to understand what it is...
Dude, he's so fucking mean and mad. He's mad. He's mean because he's mad. Jesus. I've noticed that his channel's got a lot less views than it did last time we responded to him. Like, back in 2020 or 2021, I think it was, last time I responded to one of his videos, he was pulling, like, regularly hundreds of thousands of views per video, like, without fail. Now he's pulling, like, a few tens of thousands of views per video. So Young Rippa is falling off. Like, even though his politics are more popular than ever right now, within the online sphere, his grift has been going for so long and it's gotten so old that it's just not really, like, he's just kind of falling off. A Tolkien? Yeah.
Is that I'm referring to regarding the race swaps. You can go ahead and watch that video. They exist. There's several videos out there that exist. I've defined this very thoroughly. It's not just I'll catch.
Miles Morales isn't a race swap, though. He's another character who takes up the mantle of Spider-Man, who is black. And there are aspects of him being black that are relevant to the story, but overall, it's really not. Like, Miles Morales would still essentially be Miles Morales insofar as the story that's being told, regardless of the race that the character is. Like, this is not an example of, like, some super hyper woke tokenized character that you're trying to make it out to be. So another big part of why I think Young Rippa is probably falling off pretty hard is that he clearly doesn't know how to pick and choose his battles like most of the right does. Usually the right knows when not to go up against something that's going to be, like, overwhelmingly popular. Sometimes they miss and it looks really bad for them. Like when the right, like, lost their shit over the Last of Us show, and they went really hard against it. We watched that one Brett Cooper video recently where she was shitting on The Last of Us show and saying, this show's clearly super woke. One of the actors in it's literally non-binary or gender fluid or whatever, and it's gonna go super woke. It's gonna be super bad, especially if The Last of Us 2 is anything to go off of. And Brett Cooper's like shitting on The Last of Us show before it's even come out, but we were responding to the video after The Last of Us show had finished already and had gotten like critical, unanimous, like positive reviews, or not critical, like unanimously positive reviews by like everybody. Even people on the right like had to cope about how the show's still good, even though the like about how the show isn't woke but is, but isn't, but like is it. They really tried to find a way to take a win out of like The Last of Us show, but they just couldn't. They really couldn't. But yeah, that was funny, seeing them try to predict that The Last of Us show would be bad, and then watching that video after The Last of Us show came out and was already one of the best like rated shows on TV. That was a good clip.
All term that I use just willy-nilly. So you're free to go watch that.
Okay, sure. Why not?
That's not what this is about. Now,
Protect trans kids. That's what it says. Protect trans kids. That's fine. What's the problem with a flag that says protect trans?
Because
I mean, if anything, conservatives should agree with that, right? Don't they think that like trans people and are like grooming kids, and like all trans kids are grooming victims? Don't you like do you think that sentiment would be something they'd agree with? Protect trans kids. It's almost like the phrase protect trans kids means protect them from the right trying to take their like rights away. You know what's really funny? The right's reaction to the protect trans kids thing reminds me a lot of the it's okay to be white thing. So the right came up with it's okay to be white, which means like, which is a white supremacist dog whistle that was made up by white supremacist neo-Nazis in response to like BLM. They came up with that because on the surface, like it's okay to be white is an inarguable statement. Like, yeah, of course it's okay to be white. Who thinks it's not okay to be white? Like maybe some really crazy radical SJWs out there, but you know, most people agree with that sentiment. So it's a very easy to agree with statement. But if you disagree with it, it's very easy to pretend like the statement means nothing more than what the words mean. And that's what they do. When people say, you know what the meaning behind, like, it's okay to be white is, right? Like, why people paste those stickers on, like, BLM signs and stuff. Like, you know what that is and where that comes from, right? And they're like, what do you mean? It's just, oh, you think it's okay to be white is a offensive phrase? You must think it's not okay to be white. And then they'll argue that. And it's like, but it doesn't just mean it's okay to be white. There's more meaning to it. That's the same thing that's happening here. The statement protect trans kids on its own literally just means protect trans kids, something that I think anybody can agree with. But now they're desperately arguing, oh, but it doesn't mean that. It means something else. It means something else. And now they recognize that a short, quippy phrase like that can have more meaning to it. I think it's funny. I do think it's funny because remember, the right's extremely hypocritical about these things. They know that like the words "it's okay to be white" means more than "it's okay to be white," because they recognize the same thing when the left has a catchphrase that means more than what it says on the surface.
trans kids don't exist.
Kids. Most people
Yeah, they
who
do.
are trans find out that they
Oh,
are
I'd love
trans
to debate him
between
on
the
this.
ages of 4 and 6. This is pretty well.
Wait, young Rippa, would you like to debate me on whether or not trans kids exist? I would love to debate you on that. I would love to debate you on whether or not trans kids exist. Because I know that gender dysphoria exists. There is overwhelming evidence that gender dysphoria exists in children. And there's overwhelming evidence that transitioning is the way to treat gender dysphoria. So if you want to try to argue the premise that trans kids don't exist, let's debate it on stream. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't need any prep time. Do it tomorrow. That's an easy one. I'm down. Let's go.
That's telling me that it's a learned trait. Certainly, if that is to be the case, of course, I will be very precise about my language here. When I talk about trans kids and them not existing, I'm speaking to the transitionary stuff. And this is something that, again, is a learned trait. And when you consider the
transitionary stuff. Yeah, so basically, what he's trying to say right now is that there is no merit to like the idea of a kid transitioning. Like, it's just a bad thing that there's no like good sides to, no good arguments for. The problem is conservatives like this desperately rely on the idea of like I've got things figured out. Let me just, you know, intuit this by pulling it out of my ass, right? Like, if I asked young Rippa59 right now while he was recording this, do you have any, like, any data to back up that idea? Like anything. Like, even, like, a medical institution's name that backs up the perspective that, like, trans kids don't exist. Like, anything? Even one. Because I can remember, like, a few off the top of my head. The American Academy of Pediatrics is a big one. That's one that specializes around the health of children. The American Academy of, or the American Psychoanalytic Association is an association of doctors and psychologists that focus on, like human mental health and like the brain and how that works. So they seem to have agreed on my position here. The American Psychological Association. Did I already say that one? The American, a lot of American associations, you know, a lot of associations and organizations of doctors that are American, which is better than any other country because America is best. So, like, I can name like a couple or a few off the top of my head without even like looking. You know, I don't even need to Google it to name a few off the top of my head. There is no way this guy could name anything. Do you know why? There is none. There is not a single bit of solid scientific or medical evidence that actually argues that trans people are in any way invalid or that transitioning is bad for them. All data either shows that transitioning and reaffirmation either has an overwhelmingly positive effect on the mental health and well-being of trans people or no effect. Either has no effect at all, and they stay the same, rarely, or it has an overwhelmingly positive effect, which is what's overwhelmingly found in the vast majority of cases. Do you know what young Rippa would argue if I brought this up to him in a debate right now? He would argue that these institutions have been corrupted by the left. That's probably what he'd argue. Because once you get these people onto the discussion of data and science and facts, like once you actually try to get them onto that stuff, very quickly they start to get scared and they want to get out of there because they don't actually have anything to back up what they say. It's all feelings. It's all like, yeah, the very basic understanding of human biology we all learned in elementary school is pretty much all you need to know, and it doesn't go any deeper further than that. The world is as simple as it was when you learned about it in elementary school. It's like, okay, that's the idea you want to push.
No, I'm not. I hate to use the term biological sex, because we're only doing that because they like to use gender and sex. They're not interchangeably the way they use it. But nonetheless.
Well, not the way the like degenerates you're talking about, I guess, use it, but the way the scientific community uses it. Sex and gender are not the same thing by the like complete consensus of academics and scientists and biologists and psychologists. And on that level, gender is not binary like you think it is. They don't think gender is binary, nor do they think sex is binary. Both of these things are considered a spectrum. Sex, specifically, like sexual phenotypes, are measured on a bimodal distribution of sexual characteristics, with feminine as one side of the spectrum and masculine on the other.
When you have someone that thinks that they are something else that they're not, definitely a youngster, when you consider that they're young and they could be going through all
these people's arguments hinge on the idea. They argue the same thing, that like kids can't be gay because how could kids know that this lifestyle is what they want? Because they like fundamentally don't understand that like no amount of arguing there's no such thing as gay people or trans people will make gay or trans people stop existing. They just do exist, and your opinion, well, reality just doesn't care about your opinion, right? Like, trans people exist, the science says what it says, and you are basically the party that is trying to bend the lives and science, or the lives of other people and science, to your will because you're uncomfortable with what the science says. So, I'm sorry you're uncomfortable with reality, but, like, you're just having it pointed out to you, and your response is to get mad and call the person pointing it out a degenerate because they have, like, a funny VTuber avatar with the big titties. Like, you're just triggered. You're a snowflake, is what I'm saying. You're a snowflake, young Rippa.
All sorts of different things. I'm willing to bet that I thought I was a Ninja Turtle or something like that growing up. It's not...
Like, dude, I knew I was a boy since I was, like, as long as I can remember. I cannot remember a time where I did not know I was a boy. I always knew I was a boy, and I always knew I was straight. Like, some of my earliest memories are seeing girls and being attracted to them, okay? That is the same case for gay and trans people the vast majority of the time. The same way that you've got very early memories of seeing a girl and thinking, oh, I'm attracted to girls. A lot of gay or bisexual or pansexual people feel the same way about whatever, like, gender they're attracted to. A lot of trans people knew since they were very young, in the same way that I've known I was a boy since I was very young. There's never been, like, a twinge of doubt that maybe I'm a girl. That's never been a thing for me. I was sure that I was a boy. I don't feel like there's a lot of, like, kids out there that are, like, confused about their gender who are cis. It happens, sure, but do you know what's most likely to lead to cases where that happens and you've got detransitioners? Taking away gender-affirming care from kids so that they can't get access to medical professionals who know about this field of medicine. When you take them away from that, they're more likely to think, maybe I am trans, and just try out DIY HRT or something, and maybe they then, they do end up transitioning and needing to detransition in the future. That may happen. But the problem there was that they didn't have access to gender-affirming care and doctors and medical professionals in the first place. They just kind of had to figure it out on their own, and they made the wrong choice. As many, or the wrong identification, as many people do when they're trying to identify their own, like, medical issues without medical help. It's almost like depriving trans people of medically gender-affirming care is a bad thing. Because the medical professionals, generally speaking, can tell when someone's not trans.
Legitimate. It's not something that needs to be validated, certainly considering that I am not a freaking Ninja Turtle by any means. It's cool to have fun.
Dude, cis and straight people's go-to response to, like, hey, we're trans or gay or whatever, and we'd like to see ourselves exist in media, so please stop screaming every time, like, a gay person exists in a movie or whatever. Their response is, oh yeah? Well, I don't need to be constantly validated for my identity. And it's like, yeah, of course you don't, because no one's trying to invalidate it. There is not a literal multi-billion-dollar industry that exists based around invalidating the identity of cis straight guys. I'm sorry, but, like, you're not experiencing the same kind of, like, pushback to your identity that trans people do, which is why there's such a difference. That's pretty much, yeah. There you go.
And do little stuff like that. But, like, as far as who exactly that I am, we don't apply this logic to anything else. But for whatever reason, when it comes to this subject matter, all logic goes out the window, where we would allow a young person.
Remember, guys, these people depend desperately on the idea, like this faint idea of logic. That, like, yeah, logically, men are men and women are women. That's as simple as it is. If you try to take the conversation anywhere deeper than that, like if you try to bring up any, like, scientific studies or anything like that, they fall apart. All they have is, like, feelings they pulled out of their ass that sound pretty good to me. That's pretty much, like, the redneck southern sounds pretty good to me is, like, pretty much how the vast majority of people think when they watch one of these videos. Sounds right to me. Actually, saying this isn't true. Men like Rippa are constantly overcompensating for their low T, evident by the fact he's triggered over a queer person. That is true. Yeah. I guess so, yeah. It is pretty low T behavior to be as upset as he is about this. So maybe he does feel invalidated. You know, that is possibly true, you know? Maybe they do feel invalidated in their gender and their sexuality, and they see trans people as challenging it, and so they feel threatened, and they're trying to defend it. That would make sense. I mean, conservatives are just, like, open liars. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they were lying about the idea of them not feeling the need to validate their gender identity, because then again, like, literally half of conservative content is about gender affirmation. Like, Andrew Tate and his content is literally about affirming the gender of cis men that are, like, self-conscious about their gender identity and need it to be reaffirmed. That's literally Andrew Tate and that entire sphere of, like, right-wing content's entire, like, shtick. Is the gender reaffirmation of, like, teenage cis men. It's true. It's fucking true. Alright, we need to get back to We need to get back home.
That is talking about, oh, they find out when they're 4 to 6. Yeah, maybe taught by the parents or the teachers or something of that nature. But
Dude, conservatives have been arguing, what if a kid decides they identify as a walrus or something for like 20 years? It's fucking wild. Like, what if my kid thinks they identify as a fire truck? What if my kid identifies as an attack helicopter? It's just like the most like repeated on loop cycle of propaganda.
You would not allow that to be like not a permanent thing in the sense of, because they're going to say, well, puberty blockers is reversible and all of that stuff.
Yes,
we'll get to that in a minute. But
they are, though. Wait, what? Puberty blockers were invented for people who are going through puberty so that it is blocked. Before they were ever used on trans people, puberty blockers were developed for use on minors because that's the group that is predominantly going through puberty. So it's bad to use those puberty blockers when it's a trans person, but it's okay when it's a cis person, is what they're saying.
As far as like doing something to their body for even cosmetically to change something like that, it's not anything that we would accept in any sort of given other idea, no matter who it is that they thought they were. But for whatever reason, with the gender subject, we're supposed to say that they have the capacity at 4 years of age to make that, to determine.
Well, 4-year-olds aren't transitioning medically, because a 4-year-old is pre-puberty, so they wouldn't be taking hormones. The only thing a 4-year-old would be doing is like dressing different, maybe growing out or cutting their hair, and maybe going by a different name and pronouns. So yeah, there's literally no downside to letting a 4-year-old choose their gender. There's literally no downside. And if you want to argue it's that kids literally can't understand these things like until they're a certain age, then yeah, it would be around puberty. Like, are they old enough at puberty to understand like their gender identity? And if not, like, why can 16-year-olds drink and get tattoos in most states with parental permission? I literally had 16-year-old, like, coworkers and swim team mates when I was on the swim team and when I worked as lifeguard who were 16 who had just gotten their first tattoo on their 16th birthday with parents' permission. You were also allowed to drink, I believe, in Florida with permission and oversight and on the property of a guardian, of a legal adult who's a guardian. Like, there are tons of mostly conservative states who literally, like, I've literally heard conservatives, like conservative dudes say, yeah, you're 13 years old now, you're a real man, to their sons. Like, that is overwhelmingly common, like, in right-wing circles, but now all of a sudden, a 14-year-old doesn't know whether or not he's a boy or a girl. That's what they say is like a dunk against the left, but that's what they're arguing. They're arguing that a 13-year-old or a 14 or a 15 or a 16-year-old is too young to know what gender they are. That is what they are arguing.
And then it is on these adults who should have the mental capacity.
I assure you, at 13 years old, I knew I was a guy, and I knew I was straight at 13, I assure you.
To sort of steer them in a lane and allow them to like live out this sort of weird concept of them being something it is that they are not.
So what Young Ripa is doing right now is trying to turn the statement, you should let your kid basically identify however they want, and if they say they're trans, you shouldn't push something else on them, into, well, if you give them that freedom, then it's going to push them into using that freedom to identify as trans even if they're not. And the funny thing is, Young Ripa implies that, like, there maybe is some small, like, percentage of actual trans people out there, but, like, Young Ripa will never admit when that's the case, right? Like, all of Young Ripa's content is shitting on people and examples of people who he sees as not being actually trans, but he implies maybe there are some real trans people out there, and that's fine, but you'll never see him acknowledge a single example of that, because he's just trying to come off as not transphobic while being transphobic. He's making content for transphobes, being transphobic while doing it, but trying to have that layer of, like, you know, plausible deniability.
You're attempting to normalize the hate, that position. a lot of degenerates are. My argument is that that cannot happen unless
He means LGBT. When he says degenerate, he means like LGBT or left-leaning. The right, like, for those who don't know, calling the left degenerate is a very common Nazi talking point. In fact, the thing that young Ripa was complaining about in that video was a Nazi thing. The thing that young Ripa was complaining about in the video that Suris was making fun of is something called degenerate art. Degenerate art, or in German, Entartete Kunst, I can't do German, I'm sorry, was a term adopted in the 1920s by the Nazi Party in Germany to describe modern art. During the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler, German modernist art, including many works of internationally renowned artists, was removed from state-owned museums and banned in Nazi Germany on the grounds that such art was an insult to German feeling, un-German, Freemasonic, Jewish, or communist in nature. Those identified as degenerate artists were subjected to sanctions that included being dismissed from teaching positions, being forbidden to exhibit or to sell their art, and in some cases being forbidden to produce art. Degenerate art was also the title of an exhibition held by the Nazis in Munich in 1937, consisting of 650 modernists. They literally made a Nazi art show in Nazi Germany to show off the degenerate art, because even then they had to admit it was pretty good, but they still wanted to ban it. So they could still look at it as long as it was under the guise of shitting on it, right? Basically anything that was like communist, Jewish, gay, non-white depicting, anything like that was considered degenerate art, which is the exact thing conservatives are complaining about now, by the way. Like, word for word. The exact thing conservatives are complaining about now. They claim that the inclusion of these things is degenerate, and that the, like, go woke, go broke, what they're talking about is the concept of degenerate art. They're doing Nazi talking points, just very subtly.
you have adult.
The idea that, like, progressive values were infiltrating art and, like, ruining society and ruining the West literally originates from the Nazi Party.
It's gearing them in that way at that young age. As an adult, they can make whatever decision, and that's a drastic sort of decision. They can make that, or a drastic change. They can make that decision as an adult. But that's not what we're dealing with children, okay? It's a very simple concept.
Well documented. People who are...
Well, unfortunately, nothing you had to say there, young Ripa, holds to any scientific or evidential scrutiny. I guess we can kind of finish this bit off, because I imagine it's just going to be another, like, 30 minutes of this, because we're literally only 5 minutes into a 35-minute video. We're not watching the rest, I'm sorry. I'm just going to finish this segment off with the arguments that the left has in favor of trans-affirming care as, like, a comparison to what young Ripa had. So young Ripa, as well as literally every other transphobic content creator we've ever watched on the channel, has failed to, like, supply a single source or study or bit of evidence for what they believe in. This has been an ongoing trend of conservatives just saying that trans people are degenerate, just saying that, you know, transitioning a kid with, like, hormone blockers is somehow genital mutilation. They've just been saying these things, but not really citing anything. And I've also said a lot of things here, but the big difference between me and young Ripa is that I'm actually willing to cite what I say. Let me see if I can find it. There's a banger video that Soaked on Left likes to post that I like to show whenever we're gonna dunk on some transphobic shit. Because it's just very good. It's very good. I'm gonna have to scroll for a minute to find it. Found it. All right. Get ready for a little bit of ear destruction, but this video goes hard. Here's the evidence that backs up the validity of trans people, as opposed to the shit that young Ripa pulls out of his ass.
The answer to my name is not just a symbol or a target sign. A spell that attracts all who speak facts online all the time. The answer to my name is not just a symbol or a target sign. A voice that compels all to rebel from all unshackled minds. It's you and me, your mom, it's me. I'll take another hit from my name. You'll see now.
And my favorite part about this video is that it starts off with some, like, stained glass Christian to trick conservatives into clicking on it. Because conservatives will literally run and hide and cover their ears and scream with their eyes closed like a child when exposed to any information that, like, utterly destroys their worldview. So you have to, like, trick them into being exposed to reality. It's one of my favorite things ever. Is, like, not only is the video, like, full of debunks of conservative ideology, but the beginning of the video is a denotation of the fact that conservatives are afraid of even engaging with their opposition. You have to trick them into being exposed to the science. Such a good video.